Hi, I'm Cynthia Hunt, the program specialist here at the Amarillo Public Library. Fall is my favorite time of year, and one of the reasons for that is the colors in those beautiful autumn leaves. The only thing wrong with them is they're only available for a couple of weeks here in the Texas Panhandle. So I've decided to do a workaround on that and make leaves that you can make year-round and enjoy year-round. Right now, I'm going to be teaching you how to make a knitted maple leaf. I'm doing a series on knitted autumn leaves. There are 3 different leaf patterns that you can look for on our YouTube channel. The first is the easy leaf, the second is the oak leaf, and the third is the maple leaf. I'll be doing these stitch by stitch as you come across them in the pattern, and the patterns are all down below, and that way you'll be able to master a stitch, hit me on pause, and when you come to a new thing you don't understand, hit play, and there I'll be to explain what you need to do next. What we're going to be doing, I'm going to be using size 8 double pointed needles. Now I like to use bamboo needles because they're a little less slick than the metal needles. So if you can, get some of those, but you can also do it on regular double pointed needles. Why are they called double pointed needles? Kind of self-explanatory. We are also going to be using some worsted weight wool in a color of your choice, or you can use a variegated yarn, but I'm using a worsted weight yarn in fall colors for each of these, and that's a medium weight yarn. It'll have the number 4 on the little band around the skein. So once you have your yarn and your needles, you'll need a pair of scissors and a yarn needle so that you can tie in your woven ends. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to do is make a slip knot in your yarn. That is done by making a loop with your yarn and then putting the skein end under it, pinching it and bringing it up, and that makes your slip knot. Then what you're going to do is a long tail cast on. You're only going to need to cast on 3 stitches, so this is my go-to cast on. It won't take you but a minute to learn. Here's how you do it. Okay, so to begin your maple leaf, you're going to need to do a slip knot. And the way to do that is I have my yarn with the cut end going to my left and the ball or skein yarn going to my right. I'm going to take the skein yarn and bring it around and over the cut end, then bring it underneath the loop, and then pinch that piece of yarn and bring it up to make a little knot. Now this is called a slip knot, and what you will do with that is you will put your needle into the slip knot, and then pulling on the skein yarn, it will tighten down until it's snug, not tight, just snug, so it doesn't slide right off when you tip down your needle. You don't want to strangle your needle. Your needle is your friend. Now, what you're going to do is what is called a long tail cast on. That's why you leave quite a bit of yarn at the cut end, because you're going to need some in order to do the cast on. And again, you'll keep your cut end on the left, your ball end on the right, and you're going to pinch together your thumb and your index finger and insert them between the 2 pieces of yarn, and then you're going to spread them apart. You're going to use your other fingers to maintain some tension on the 2 pieces of yarn so they don't just slip right out. So you're going to pull your needle towards you so that there's an X formed over here on your thumb. And you're going to take the tip of that needle, and I'm holding the slip knot on the needle with my index finger. And I'm going to bring it up my thumb under that piece of yarn that's on my thumb, then stroke down my index finger until I get past the piece of yarn that's on that finger. And then I'm going to stroke back down my thumb to get back through that piece of yarn on my thumb. I'm going to let my thumb out of that yarn, that loop of yarn, and then tighten it. And there I have a second stitch on my needle. If you want to do a lot more long tail cast on, you can go to the Knitted Bunnies video that we have on our YouTube channel. I'm going to start this again. You go up the thumb, down the index finger, and back through the loop on the thumb, and then let go with the thumb, and you've got 3 stitches. If you want to learn a lot more of, or practice it a bit more, go to the Knitted Bunnies video on this YouTube channel, and we have a much longer session on both the slip knot, the long tail cast on, and the knit stitch. So the Knitted Bunnies are your friends, and you can go on ahead and do that if you want to practice. But we're going to go on ahead and move forward with making an I-cord. Now that you've cast on your 3 stitches, we're going to make something called an I-cord. That's the letter I, not the kind you get eyelashes in. So you're going to make an I-cord. Letter I and the word C-O-R-D, I-cord. And that's how you make the stem of your leaf. So you'll be able to make this as long or as short as you feel like making it. Here's how you do it. Okay, now you've got your 3 stitches on your needle. Usually at this point, when you start your first row after casting on, you turn your work and put your needle in your left hand. But this time, what we're gonna do is just slide those 3 stitches to the other end of our double pointed needle, which is how you are going to make your I-cord. And we are going to knit those 3 stitches. Now I am going to hold the cut end of my yarn in my left hand so I don't accidentally use it, which I have done before. And if you don't do this, you will too. And what I'm going to do is knit 3 stitches. Now because the beginning of the yarn was at the opposite end of these 3 stitches, it's going to create kind of a little tube. So every time you knit the 3 stitches, instead of turning, you're going to slide it down to the other tip of the needle. And once you've done 2 or 3 of these, you won't have to worry about keeping that cut end in your left hand because it'll be far enough down from what you're doing, and I like to give it a little tug every time so that I can see how far I've gone. Slide it down. Knit 3 stitches. I give it a tug. See, it's starting to, it's almost at a ½ an inch already. I'm gonna slide it down, do 3 more stitches. And if you've ever wondered how those little cords that they put through those grommets on your hoodies are made, except they're using probably machines to do it, I'm sure they are. This is how they're made. They're little round pieces of cord. And you just slip it down to the other end, knit another 3 until you're happy with the length of your stem, because that's what this part of the leaf is going to be. This I-cord is going to be the leaf stem that holds it to the tree. And it's about 1 inch now. So I'm gonna slide it, almost caught myself and turned. So I'm gonna go ahead, do 3 quick stitches. And I'm about at 1.5 inches, so I think what I'm gonna do is start turning my work. And from this point, everything will be in the flat. If you want to, you can go on ahead and switch to single pointed needles, but the entire thing will fit on this 7-inch double pointed needle, so I'm just going to keep it on there. Okay, now we're done with the I-cord, so we'll begin turning our work after each row. And the first row you're going to be making is going to involve 2 increase stitches called a make right, or make one right, and make left, or make one left. They're really pretty easy, but here's how you make them. Okay, so you're beginning your work in the flat, and you're going to have to do a pretty big increase in the width of your leaf. So you're going to start off with 2 new increase stitches called make right, which is indicated by the letters MR, and make left. Now when you have 2 stitches, I knitted 1 stitch, and you can see there's this one piece of yarn going across between the 2. What I'm going to do is grab that with my right needle, slip it over the tip of my left needle, then treat it like I would a newly knitted, another knit stitch on that needle. So I will just knit right through it. Then I'm going to knit a stitch just like it says in the pattern, and I'm going to do a knit left. Now a knit left, instead of going over it this way, you're going to bring your left needle to the front and work through it from the back. And then I'm going to go through the back loop of that stitch and downward, and then bring it back up. And this, honestly, I think you could do the same thing on both of them, because I'm not that picky. But if you want to do it right, you can go on ahead and do the make right and the make left every time. And you'll probably be better at knitting than I am by the time this is over. Now you've got 5 stitches on your needle, and it's time to turn your work and move on to the next thing, which is the purl stitch. Now this is going to be a stockinette style pattern, which means every other row you're going to be purling across. Purl is spelled P-U-R-L. It is usually indicated with the lowercase letter p on most patterns. So what we're going to do, and sometimes it's an uppercase P. So what we're going to do is purl across those 5 stitches, and by the time you're done with this leaf, you will be a master of the purl stitch. Now you've increased using the make right and the make one left. Now you have 5 stitches. Now you turn your work and you're going to do the purl stitch. The purl stitch has a couple of decided differences from the knit stitch. With the knit stitch, you go up in the same direction through each stitch as the needle that they're already on. With the purl stitch, you're going to go in the opposite direction. Also, with the knit stitch, you bring the yarn from the back to the front when you're throwing your loop. With the purl stitch, you will start it at the front and bring it around and then bring it up. So here's what a purl stitch looks like. You'll bring it in the opposite direction of the needle on the left, so that they're kind of like having their arms crossed. Then you're going to bring your yarn around the top of the right needle and bring it around counterclockwise, then bring it up through the middle of that stitch that's on the left side and slide it off, and then tighten it just to make it snug. Again, you're going to bring it in the opposite direction, bring it around from the front to the back, slide it up through the middle of that stitch, and then slide it off. Going to go around, up through the middle, and slide it off. It's really kind of easier than the knit stitch. A lot of people, whenever I'm trying to teach them the knit stitch, are automatically doing the purl stitch, and I have to kind of break them of the habit, because you always teach the knit stitch first. So one last purl stitch. We're going to bring it in the opposite direction, bring it around, and then bring it up through the middle. And now you've got 5 purl stitches. What we're going to do next is, because we have to increase the size of this leaf really early on, as you can see by looking at this leaf, you're going to increase it a whole lot to make it into this shape really quickly. So what we're going to do is a double increase stitch that will take 1 stitch and turn it into not 2 but 3 stitches. And this is called the knit front back front stitch. And it kind of makes me think of somebody who's dilly-dallying. But you'll start it off by doing a regular knit stitch, but instead of taking the stitch that's on the left needle off at this point, you're going to swing your needle around and go back down, kind of almost like you're doing a purl stitch but with the right needle behind the left needle. And then you're going to bring your yarn around and bring it up. Then you're going to do another knit stitch through that stitch. So you've got 2 on here already. You're going to bring it up for a 3rd stitch, bring your yarn around, and bring it off. So you had 1 stitch that is now 3 stitches. And you're going to do this 5 times. And enjoy it, because this is the only time you're going to be doing this stitch on the entire pattern. So bring it up, around, swing around your needle to go through that back part of the yarn on that stitch. Bring your yarn around, bring that loop of yarn onto your right needle. Then you're going to go back through that stitch just like you were doing originally to do a knit stitch. There we go. Then you bring it off. Now, instead of 2 stitches, which is all I started with, I've got 6 stitches on here. I'm going to do it again. Knit, front, knit, back, and knit, front. It gets kind of tight, so I hope you're a loose knitter. If you're not, you're going to be by the time this is over. Either that or you're going to be crazy. So knit front, knit, swing around, go back down, to knit back. Now as I do each part, I like to get it all the way onto the rod of this right needle so that it doesn't get too tight. And I'm going to go back up and knit the front again. So knit front, back, front, and slide it off. And one last time, knit the front, knit the back, and knit the front again. And now, instead of having 5 measly little stitches, you've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15 stitches. So you're going to turn your work and purl across, and then you know all the stitches you need to do. Actually, you don't. I'm going to go on ahead and let you know that when you reach, I'm going to purl across this row, and while I'm doing it, I'm going to explain row 5 to you, because on row 5 there's a section that is in parentheses, and anytime you come to a pair of parentheses in a knitting pattern, they will have a bunch of stitches inside that pattern, inside those parentheses, and then it will usually say either an X for times, or they will say a number of repeats that you need to do. But what that means is, what you will do is you will do that same combination of stitches. In the case of row 5, it's knit 1, make 1 right, knit 1, make 1 left, knit 1. And you're going to do that 5 times. So that's going to expand the number of stitches from 15 to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, to about 25 stitches, I believe. So go on ahead, purl across this row, and then what you're going to do is do that same combination all the way across. You already know how to do the make right and the make left. If not, you can go back in the video and find out how I was doing it and kind of review it. And then I'll see you again when we get to row 7. And that's when we'll have the next thing that I haven't already taught you how to do. Okay, now we're at row 7. And row 7 has a couple of terms we haven't covered before in this pattern. The first is SSK, which stands for slip, slip, knit. Here's how you do that. Okay, now we've reached line or row number 7 in your pattern. And that is going to start off with the letters SSK. That stands for slip, slip, knit. And what you're going to be doing is slipping 2 stitches from the left needle onto the right needle, one at a time. You're going to slip them knit-wise. So you're going to go in like you're about to knit, but you're going to move it on over. And you're going to do it again. And then you've got those 2 stitches, you can tighten them up a little if you want to, on your right needle. And what you're going to do next is bring your left needle through and in front of those 2 stitches so that it looks like you're going through the back loop of your knit front back front that we did earlier. And what you're going to do is treat it just the same way. You're going to bring your yarn around and up through those 2 slipped stitches. So you've turned 2 slipped stitches into a single stitch. So that is a decreased stitch. Slip, slip, knit, SSK is a decreased stitch. It takes 2 stitches and turns them into 1. Now what you're going to do is knit 2 stitches, and then on row 7 you're going to do what is called a wrap and turn. So to begin your wrap and turn, and that is what is shown on the pattern as a capital W, an ampersand, and a capital T. You bring your yarn forward, you slip purlwise, not knitwise, 1 stitch so it doesn't get twisted when it's being pulled over. Then you bring that yarn to the back so it wraps around this stitch. Then you slip that stitch back on to the left needle. Then you turn, so you have wrapped that yarn around it, and now you have turned your work. And what you're going to do after that is just purl 1, but that's on the next row after you've turned it. But that will keep you from having a hole in your work. Okay, now we're at row 11, and there are some little tricky things in here. You're going to be starting off the row with binding off 3 stitches. That is done by knitting 2 stitches on your row and then passing the first stitch that you knitted over the second stitch like this. Do that 2 more times, and then you're going to follow this row, which is knit 1, then you'll make 1 right, which you've been doing along, knit 1, make 1 left. Then you'll see there are some parentheses on your pattern, and you haven't come across these before, at least not on my videos. So this is what is between the parentheses is knit 4, make 1 right, knit 1, make 1 left, in parentheses times 2. That means you do everything that is between those 2 parentheses twice. And they did this so you wouldn't go nuts. Because if they wrote knit 4, make 1 right, knit 2, make 1 left, knit 4, make 1 right, knit 2, make 1 left, you'd get lost. And it would not fit on one line of the paper. So they just went on ahead and said, well, you're repeating the whole thing, we'll just put it in parentheses times 2. Kind of like the same thing you do in a mathematical equation. You do everything that's between the 2 parentheses first. So you'll go up to the parentheses and do everything that's in between those 2 parentheses 2 times. Then once you're done with that, you'll knit your 5 stitches and you'll do something called a knit 2 together. And here's how you do that. Okay, so now we're at row 11. And on row 11, we're going to begin by binding off 3 stitches. And the way you bind off these stitches, since this is the knit side of your work, is you are going to knit 2 stitches. Oops, sorry, I almost started knitting 3. Knit 2 stitches, grab the one farthest from the tip of your needle, and then bring it over the second stitch that you knitted. You've now bound off 1 stitch. Knit another stitch and bring the one farthest from the tip over the one closest from the stitch, and that is binding off your second stitch. Now you're going to knit 1 more stitch and bring over that stitch a 3rd time, and you have now bound off 3 stitches. And what you're going to do after this is knit 1, make 1 right, which you've done before, knit 1, make 1 left, why making 1 left is always harder for me than make 1 right. Probably because I haven't done it as much. And then you're going to hit another pair of parentheses. And remember that when you have a pair of parentheses, you're going to repeat the entire sequence of stitches inside that parentheses however many times it says. In this case, instead of saying repeat 5 times like it did on row 5, it's just having an X2. So it's times 2, but that means the same thing. You'll be repeating it twice. So what you'll do is knit 4, make 1 right, knit 1, make 1 left, and repeat that whole sequence a 2nd time. So knit 4, make 1 right, knit 1, and make 1 left, and that completes the part that is inside the parentheses. So then you go on with the other instructions, which is knit 5 and knit 2 together. knit 2 together, and you have completed row 11. And there we go. Now, on the following row, it says to purl 3 and then wrap and turn, and you haven't done a purlwise wrap and turn, so that's what we're going to do now. Purl 3 stitches, then instead of bringing the yarn forward because you're purling and it's already forward, you're going to bring the yarn back, slide over your stitch, bring the yarn forward again, slide the stitch back over, and then you're going to turn it. And then you can take it from there. You'll be doing another purlwise wrap and turn on row 14, and then we'll see you again on row 16. Up until now, you've been binding off, or BO, knitwise, using the knit stitches. This time you're going to bind off purlwise, and here's how you do that. Okay, so you've been doing a knitwise bind off. Now you're going to learn how to do a purlwise bind off. With the knitwise bind off, you'd knit 2 stitches, then bring the first one you knit over the second one that you would knit. It's basically the same thing with the purlwise bind off, except you're doing purl stitches. So you purl a stitch, you purl a second stitch, then you bring the first stitch you purled over the second one and over the tip of there, and you've bound off 1 stitch. Now we're going to purl another stitch, tighten it up just a little bit, and then we're going to lift the stitch furthest from the tip of the needle over the one that's closest to the tip of the needle. Now you've bound off 2 stitches. We'll do it again. We're going to purl another stitch, and then we're going to bind off that back stitch, the one farthest from the tip. So now we've bound off 3. Okay, so we're now on the last line of this pattern, and it's something you've never done before, so we're going to go out with a bang. It's called SK2P. Let me show you how that's done. Now we're down to our last 3 stitches, and what we're going to do is an SK2P. I know, and it's slip 2 knitwise, knit a stitch, then pass the 2 slip stitches over it. So what we're going to do is slip both of these together knitwise, then we're going to knit a stitch just like this, and then we're going to take those 2 slipped stitches over that knitted stitch, and that is the final stitch you need in your knitted leaf. Then what you're going to do is cut off your yarn. Come on, cut. And then we're going to pass it through that last stitch, and you're done. All you have to do now is weave in your ends, and then you can moisten and block your leaf so it will stand out really nice and stiff, or not stiff, but nice and flat, just like this one. This one has been blocked. This one has not been blocked, and you can see how much it curls up because we were doing stockinette stitches on the front of this work. So the way that you're going to block your work is get a towel. It could be folded up. It's actually better if it is. And then moisten your leaf in water. Then take it face down so that that smooth stockinette stitch part is against the towel. Get some straight pins and just pin out all of the stitches that are tending to curl. You can even do the stem if you want, but you don't have to. But that way, make them nice and spread out, and boom, walk away. When you come back and it's nice and dry, it may be overnight, but that's a great time to do it. You come back, you've got a nice flat dry leaf just like this one. So if you want a curly leaf, you can do that too, but I highly recommend, since it won't be recognizable as a maple leaf, that you go on ahead and block it. And that's it for the knitted maple leaf. Thank you for joining me for this knitted leaf pattern. And keep in mind, there are 2 other knitted leaf tutorials that I've done that are also on our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this one, hit like. And if you'd like, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to hit that notification bell so we can let you know when we do something new. Take care. Bye-bye.